Zombola. Welcome to your UN House and to the 14th session of Bhutan Dialogues. Our topic today is shifting mindsets, accelerating gross national happiness, and the SDGs. A development mindset looks at challenges and learning as opportunities, and failure is an opportunity for growth. It also invites us to be more willing to talk about our mistakes so that we can learn from them. Not always that common in development, I can hear you say. Indeed. Bhutan Dialogues is one such initiative where we want each session to be a learning experience. We know that the learning experience is truly succeeding for you at a personal level when we receive tough questions from the floor during the Q&A session. The tougher your questions, the more we like them. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals is the only agreed roadmap for the planet by 193 countries. And it has been mainstreamed into Bhutan's 12th five-year plan. We also know that Bhutan's holistic and sustainable development approach to development is guided by gross national happiness and its four pillars: socioeconomic growth, the environment, tradition and culture, good governance. We also are aware that in certain areas, such as Bhutan's commitment to tradition and culture, the SDGs can learn from gross national happiness. Our guest speaker today is Juergen Nagler, who is the resident representative AI of UNDP in Bhutan. Juergen comes with 20 years of experience as a development practitioner. He is currently pursuing a PhD in how mindsets influence human development. How mindsets influence human development. Here in Bhutan, we understand the importance of how mindsets influence development. Whether we are speaking of the influence of former King Bhumibol of Thailand's development trajectory, or of the dedication and foresight of the Dragon Kings of Bhutan. Great mindsets provide practical inspiration. Before joining the UN, Juergen worked with Siemens and founded and continues to inspire a German NGO that supports the spread of quality education in Mali, a country in northern Africa. He has written a range of publications, but one unusual one that stood out for me has the following title: Uniting IQ, EQ, and SQ for Global Sustainability. IQ, of course, intelligence; EQ, emotional intelligence; and SQ, spiritual intelligence. At a personal level, Juergen is married to Anya, who specializes in healing and is also the primary homemaker. Our host, Dr. Karma Phuntsho, has a particular interest in taking the insights of the past into the work he does today. The past is one of the foundations of the now. This practical bent is clearly actioned in his leadership of the Loden Foundation, whose goal is to foster an enlightened society through the promotion of education, social entrepreneurship, and culture tradition. To date, Loden have trained 3,410 social entrepreneurs and supported 159 new projects. As an academic, he is helping to document Bhutan's fast disappearing cultures. Recording the country's oral traditions is one of the actions he is taking to document Bhutan's fast disappearing cultures. Finally, we know at Bhutan Dialogues that we are only doing a good job when we receive feedback on how we are doing and how good we listen and take action on that feedback. Please reach out to Dr. Karma, Phuntsho, can you stand up, Phuntsho, Sering, and I, with your feedback. Please give us your feedback and suggestions on who you would like to appear as speakers at future sessions of Bhutan Dialogues. Before closing, allow me to wish everyone a Happy New Year. Katanchela.
Welcome to Bhutan Dialogues, Juergen. I'd like to start this conversation by going back to the Buddha. The Buddha claims that we live in forest of our own opinions, ideas, and prejudices. And rarely do we go beyond this forest to mindfully listen to others, learn new things, get new ideas. Often when we carry out conversations, it's to impose on other people our own opinions and ideas, to the extent of even pontificating. And even the social media culture that we live in right now are only there to enhance our own choices and prejudices, especially when they're being manipulated by corporate commercial interests. So this forum, we hope, will be a space where we can practice mindful listening, right speech, try to assess and question our own presuppositions, try to expand our borders of thinking, try to refine our understanding of human progress. So it's an honor to have you as the 14th guest. You come with a very colorful background, so appropriate for this session. You have been in the private sector, you are now leading UNDP here in Bhutan, and you have also established your own NGO. And most interesting, the most refreshing part is you're working on a PhD thesis on mindset. How do we shape mindset? It's one of the topics that that's dear to me, because the whole Buddhist system revolves around the issue of the mind. But before we go into the main theme, let me ask you a more personal question. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, on how you came to be who you are right now? What brought you to this stage where you are beginning to question people's mindset?
Thank you, Karma. First of all, really I'm very, very grateful and honored to be able to be here. So thanks to the UN and Loden Foundation. And Karma, you're such a distinguished speaker. I'm very honored to be in this dialogue with you. I come from a pretty simple background. I grew up in a village, a small village in Germany, close to the big city of Munich, close to the Bavarian Alps, hence also my love to the mountains. So I feel very much at home here in Bhutan. Context has been a middle-class family. Was playing with my neighbors, friends, soccer in the next agriculture field. And I guess I've early learned to take some self-responsibility. So when I wanted things, my parents told me, look, if you can't afford it with your pocket money, then you have to earn it. So early I started with simple things, washing cars, shopping in different shops, weeding grass from parks next to the road to get some extra, little bit of income to afford what I wanted to have. And then I started my first own little company and wanted, I guess, I had a little bit of ambition. I wanted to achieve greater things, and this is what then at least brought me at that stage to Siemens as part of my business career. However, I wouldn't be sitting here if not some catalytic events also would have happened in my life probably. Because 1997 I had a motorbike accident. So I was on my way to work for Siemens in Portugal. And until then I was basically following the money. I really had the idea of, okay, let's make more money. But this motorbike accident somehow shook me to the core. I was taken off track I was still trying to continue my regular work, but something in the background really triggered me to reflect more about the meaning of life. And that's not an easy question. So I've tried so many different things over a 10-year period of time. I quit my job, traveled around the world, tried meditation and yoga and substances and all kinds of things, until after 10 years of searching, I realized the searching doesn't give me the answers I want. So I think I gave up on searching and started with coaching and spiritual texts, which helped me to connect to my inner side. And that then also led me to shift from chasing money to trying to pursue something more meaningful. And I was applying for a job at the UN, and luckily was able to get in. And since then I've been on this bit of different trajectory.
So a motorcycle accident was your existential wake-up call?
I guess so, yes, I would think so. It wasn't, I mean, I had one or other experience. My mother passed some years ago, which is also a moment to reflect about how we can better enjoy life. It's impermanent. But indeed, that kind of near-death experience was quite a catalyst. It was very painful, but I joked later that maybe it's a good thing. Okay.
That's wonderful. There's a Buddhist saying, Kenyan Namker. You take a tragic event as a progressive path. Basically, such a tragedy puts you on a much better path. So, while you were on that path, when you went through these changes, how would you describe the change in your mindset? How did your ideas of life change after that?
I mean, maybe until then, maybe I had more a fixed mindset. I mean, I was kind of fixated on...
Can you explain what a fixed mindset is?
Yeah. I mean, researchers that differentiate between a fixed and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is someone who is a bit more risk averse, who wants to look good, and therefore is a bit more defensive, usually not very open-minded. And as a contrast would be the growth mindset, who is more open-minded and takes failures as an opportunity to learn from it, to stand up and continue. So a growth mindset typically means that people achieve more from their potential. And I think the distinction is useful because it shows that a mindset, you're not born with a mindset, and it can be changed. I mean, it can be changed. I mean, it's within our own powers to expand our consciousness. And in that case, I guess the motorbike accident allowed me to do some introspection, to do self-reflection, and probably helped me to open up my own thinking and my own mindset. And since then, I've learned and grown and experienced different cultures and different countries, which is very beautiful. Life since then has become much more colorful to me.
Yeah. So I've read a little bit about your PhD. We had an interview a month ago or so on your PhD topic. You're doing research on mindset and ways to shift the mindset because you feel the current development discourse actually leaves out such an important factor like mindset, that it doesn't give enough room and attention to soft parts of our development.
Yes.
There's too much focus on the hard external factors. So in order to understand this better, what would consist of, what would constitute the mindset you're talking about? Is it worldviews that we have, the belief systems we have, or is it more behavioral?
It all relates to that. I mean, before I tried to define mindsets, just to also share that how I came about the idea. I was then working in the UN and the UNDP for 10 years. So my daily job was all these reports and programs, and everything's very official, but also a little bit dry. And in my personal life, I looked inwards, I looked into my own mindset, I grew, I changed things, and I saw which tremendous positive effect that had on my own development. So I realized I have to connect that somehow. I mean, I'm living myself something, and at the workplace, we are not making use of these techniques or this know-how. And when I looked into what others have been doing in this space, it was very, very limited. So mindsets is in fact a very under-researched field. And what researchers for me have found is that mindsets are made up of our beliefs, of our attitudes, of our values. That's easily said, but in reality, 80% of these things are unconscious. So we can practice it ourselves. I realize it in my interviews when I ask my counterpart, what's your mindset? And even intellectually very smart people, they can lecture about many different topics, but when you ask them, what's your own mindset? It's typically, a lot is unconscious, probably 80%. And I can encourage everyone, maybe this evening, to try it yourself, to ask yourself, what's your mindset, what are your values? I think that's very intriguing. And why is that important? I think in your opening you cited Buddha, and I think what I've learned from Buddha is, he said, what you think, that you become. So our thinking has tremendous impact on our actions and on our behavior. But most likely we are creating from 80% unconscious. So we spend all our time, and a lot the work that the UN and government and civil society is doing is we're trying to improve the conditions and the policies and regulation and incentives. All that is well, nice and well, but there's so much more. The real source of creation is within us. So I hope that I can, with that research, contribute to show at least how important it is.
Can we be a little more precise? So a simple question would be, what would be a mindset that you would want to avoid and eliminate? And what would be a mindset that you think should be adopted for development practices? Any examples you can give?
I wouldn't like to be imposing on anyone, right? I mean, people own their own mindset. I mean, on the individual level, people own their own mindsets. We form them especially during our formative years. When we're younger, we grow up in a family, education, schooling, culture from outside, media. So what I would suggest is, I mean, people can reflect on their mindset and see what elements are useful for them, what might not be so useful, which elements can be upgraded or changed. So it's a choice that individuals have. As a development practitioner, of course, I would probably elevate values that are about sustainability or about cooperating amongst each other. I probably would value them higher than egotistical things about me, myself, and I.
But it would be okay to, I suppose, say that we shun dogmatic mindset, right, across the world.
I mean, everyone can see in the news what dogmatic mindsets, what they lead to, right? I mean, if we think we're something better than others, or if we think our country is better than another country, we'll create conflict and war. If we are able to be a bit more open-minded and see our similarities, while still appreciating our individualism, then I think we can have better collaboration and a bit more peace.
I mean, for instance, the UN works a lot on gender issues.
Yes.
What about a chauvinistic, patriarchal mindset? Isn't that something that everybody in the world should give up? Should we respect the culture and respect the mindset?
That's a good one. You're putting me on the spot, Carmen. No, I mean,
I didn't mean to.
no, that's perfect. I love to go off script, so that's very good. No, look, of course, I don't think we should respect the mindset of people who are behaving in a criminal or disrespectful way. I think that would be wrong applied respect. I would higher value the respect of women, of children, of disadvantaged groups. And frankly, now that we're in the 21st century, it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, the Declaration of Human Rights is 70 years old. So we definitely should advance a peaceful mindset, a sustainable mindset.
Related to that, since you are trying to now argue that factors like mindset change must be part of development discourse, and because mindsets are culture bound, they are specific to the different cultures, and we have to appreciate cultural diversity. What will be the outcome of your research? How applicable will it be across the board, especially in the countries where the UN works? There can't be one set of mindset that is recommended to everyone.
Exactly. So I think there shouldn't be one mindset being described. That's not my intention. Quite the opposite. I mean, the research is still ongoing, so I hope I will conclude within the 1 or 2 year time period, and then also be able to come up with certain recommendations. But my passion is to at first liberate ourselves a little bit from this excess focus on the materialistic things. We shouldn't measure everything just with GDP and materialistic growth and economic growth, because I think it was Einstein who said that not everything that matters can be counted. So I think the world, frankly, and Western science as well, and it's now a global phenomenon, we are very focused on everything you can touch and measure and quantify. So I want to contribute saying that what's more important of karma? It's not your size, it's not your weight. You have different qualities. So the qualitative side comes from your inner being. And for some Westerners, this is already very strange. Like, what do you mean inner being? I mean, for Bhutan, it's very obvious. But in the globalized thinking, I want to put some emphasis saying that internal dimensions and mindset, they are very important. And then we can have a dialogue about it, about values. What do we value? Which values do we want to nurture? Because then I think we get the right balance in our development.
So your research on mindset is very much a critique or a study of the mainstream Western capitalist economy. It's not so much to shape the third world mindsets, like the mindset that may prevail in Africa or Middle East or in Asia. Do you think the mindset that's prevalent in some of the third world countries need to be assessed and needs to be perhaps reviewed, challenged? It's much easier, I think, to challenge the first world capitalist development. Because we live in a liberal society, and I think criticism is taken positively. But what about the areas where such criticism can be blasphemous?
I see the value in connecting almost different worldviews or different paradigms. If we say the West has a mindset, if the East has a mindset, who am I the one to critique the one or the other? Because I'm sure everyone has advantages and disadvantages. So what I'm trying to do is by shedding light on this formerly unconscious side of things, we can weave it together. You know, the one side might realize, oh, I like that on the other side, and vice versa. So overall, we get a more balanced approach. it's easy to critique capitalism or globalization or GDP, but it's not good enough just to say the negative about something. We have to shift to what would be the desired alternatives. And this is, by the way, where I do take inspiration from Bhutan's G&H. I find it a balanced and holistic approach, which are largely in line with the former mentioned sustainable development goals. And you're measuring things which the Western or the global development mindset does not measure or has forgotten.
But by the same token, earlier you said, you quoted Einstein to say that not everything in life can be measured. And I actually go with that. But the mainstream economics uses quantification and measurements. And even our G&H, firstly, UN's human capabilities, human development mode also uses indicators to measure progress. And Bhutan's G&H is also now adopting ways of measuring and indexing 9 aspects of our life. So they've all gone towards measuring things. How can mindset be measured? Do you think it should be left as an immeasurable thing, non-quantifiable thing?
I mean, first of all, I really hope we can find a better balance on, hopefully we can liberate ourselves a little bit with this obsession on trying to measure everything. Because if I look at my life, the most beautiful things I can measure. I mean, the love with my wife or the appreciation of nature, it would be, of course you can ask me, if you press me I can give you a number, but I don't think it really does do it justice. Overall, I think we would be well advised if we find a more balanced quantitative and qualitative approach. And if we listen to economists, I think we should hold them accountable to take a holistic approach. Because, I mean, my first training was as an economist. You're trying to make a lot of money and you don't care what you externalize. You don't measure typically how you pollute the environment, the air. And obviously, we have been on this growth model for probably a little bit too long. I mean, on one planet Earth, we're seeing the limitations. And climate change is an existential wake-up call to rethink development and growth. But if you have to measure it, if you're really obsessed about measuring it, it cannot be done in one number. So GDP is one number. UNDP has at least had an index out of 3 components. The G&H index, I think, has 9 domains. So at least we have to be as holistic as possible.
Going back again to mindset, you talked about fixed mindset, growth mindset. I've also come across another term, benefit mindset. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's by Ash Buchanan, an Australian researcher who I had the honor to interview like yourself, who has taken this dichotomy of 2 models of mindset one level further. So the benefit mindset is a mindset which thinks more about purpose and thinks beyond the individual, also about community. So it has an idea of a positive, beneficial mindset to the community at large. So I think it's a useful one because there are as many mindsets as there are people in the room and on the planet. So I think the more color we give it, the more we look into values that constitute mindsets, the more we can learn about ourselves.
You are leading the UNDP program here, and UNDP is a very big program. It's the largest branch within the UN. 17,000 employees or so around the world, 470 countries. Here you have about 30 staff. How much of the mindset study that you have done so far is being brought into your workspace? Are you trying to promote the mindset shifts among your own staff?
Yeah, it's work in progress. I mean, the good thing is with the SDGs as a global agenda, we already have a new set of goals. It's a different paradigm than the set of goals we had earlier, the MDGs. The MDGs were only for developing countries. Now the SDGs, the whole world has signed up. So overall, we're seeing a shift towards taking sustainability more into account, and that means behavior change. And in fact, there is some push of a sustainability mindset, which I find very timely. In our daily work, it also has to do with leading by example. So I think in our programs, we are tapping into the own ideas of communities. For instance, when we do small grants around the country, it's not us telling the communities about the problems and solutions. It's the communities who come up themselves. So I think this is very worthwhile to support. And also in the office, I try to nurture a growth mindset, an atmosphere which is results oriented. It's not about micromanaging each other, but about continuous learning and having a healthy work-life balance.
Is such a trend also happening in other UN offices around the world, or are we still stuck with the old bureaucratic system?
I think it depends on which part of the UN you're looking. It's work in progress. I mean, the Secretary General has for his tenure really pushed on UN reform, because the UN has to constantly upgrade itself to be able to meet the challenges. I mean, the challenges are massive. So especially in UNDP, we have had for several years now a lot of innovation. So there has been space created to take a little bit more risks on new type of thinking. And especially our new administrator, Achim Steiner, has been really at the forefront of pushing to rethink development and growth. And we're very lucky he will come to Bhutan in March, because he is inspired about G&H. So I think that's it's still a work in progress.
Pleased to hear that it's a work in progress. I think especially for sustainability mindset, one of the things perhaps all development organizations have to think is really of having what in Buddhism, a non-greedy, non-ostentatious mindset, where you appreciate simplicity and contentment and living sometimes even an austere life. There is quite a lot of criticism in our part of the world of how the UN actually represents grandeur, looking at your cars, looking at the security gates. How much do you think that aligns to your sustainability mindset?
Very good challenge, whether you'll see our new car is a hybrid, not a big nice SUV. So we have to practice what we preach. And you're right about a little bit the greediness globally. I mean, I think this is part of consumerism. And I remember probably 20, 30 years ago, I saw a poster in my home city, Munich, which cited Mahatma Gandhi saying the planet has enough for everyone's needs, but not for everyone's greeds. I think it would be good for the world to reflect a little bit on what are the priorities. Economic growth for what, or consumerism for what? I mean, I followed that rat race to consume more and earn more and spend more and be better entertained for enough that I can say it is a very shallow, it's a very fleeting type of happiness. It's not real happiness. I see it now, I mean, also you, I think you live it more than some parts of the world. It's more a part of content, it's an attitude of being content and grateful. So it's more a foundation, a way of living, rather some obscure goal at the end of our careers. And this is where I think G&H, I take inspiration about having a better order of means and goals.
Well, thank you. So my final question to you, do you have any practical tips on how people can change their mindset for better outlook, attitude, or a practice they can do? What would you share with our audience, particularly the young ones, on how to have a better mindset for progress?
I mean,
What do you do yourself? You can share also.
To me, it has a little bit to do with curiosity. When I started to look for root causes, you know, when I was facing problems in my life and I tried to change the other person or the problem, and it really didn't work. After a while, I think I became fed up and was looking deeper. What are the root causes? And once I had the hunch or the idea that it might have to do something with me, internal, my curiosity helped me. So I think for young people to be curious and to introspect and try to find deeper answers within, I think that can be very helpful. Of course, there are many inspiring books and meditation techniques that can also help. I personally also appreciate, I mean, my practice is also on a Sunday, for instance, to disconnect from the internet. I mean, we all get too addicted to the constant stream of information. So I have an internet-free Sunday and just go for a walk into nature, because also nature helps me to connect and realize that we are part of nature.
Thank you. With that, now let's invite some questions from the audience.
Thanks, Carl.
I have so many questions I could ask you, but I think there's probably a gold mine in two key areas that we did not get the chance, because we don't have enough time, to really mine into. That issue of establishing and continuing to inspire an NGO, and your work with the private sector. So I don't know if, so I'm going to pose two questions on these two topics, and if you want to shape the question just a little bit differently, please do so. So with the NGO, it seems to me that this was an example of you demonstrating your values and commitment to humanity. So what got into you that you thought that it was important enough for you to do this and dedicate a real chunk of your life to establishing an NGO and then continuing to help run it? That's one issue. The second issue, so you got into Siemens, big fancy multinational German. You, I could easily imagine most Germans would say, oh, my life is made. But you decided to move on. What got into you that you wanted to move on? Why? What was limiting in Siemens? And does that mean there's something important in the United Nations that attracted you? So those are probably the best two questions I can come up with today. If you have better ways to ask the question, please inspire us.
Thank you, Jerry. On the question how I got interested to found an NGO, it was a realization when I was traveling very simply as a backpacker, visiting Mali, beautiful but materialistically a very, very poor country in West Africa. I mean, picture Sahara Desert, not enough water, very hard to make a living there. And we were visiting a village called Niamana. In fact, there are some YouTube videos about that. And there were all these children, I mean, super joyful children, overflowing of energy and curiosity. You know, they see some white people, and it was quite touching. But they didn't have a school. And here I was from Germany, where, I mean, Europe is materialistic, so rich, and people think about the next car, the next mobile phone, the next house, and so on. So I thought, wow, can't we connect these two things? So that was the spark. That was the spark there. It was then possible because there was a Malian social entrepreneur who I interviewed because he really has a very unique mindset, who was a street child himself. So he was begging in the streets for food and money, and worked himself through the school system, learned beyond the curricula, started a little translation business. So he made some money and he wanted to give something back. So he became a social entrepreneur. And I said, wow, this is a Malian who wants to do something to give back to his community. That's a person to partner up with. Then I started fundraising in Germany to start that NGO. And since then, it has been 10 years. It has been multiple schools have been built. And I found that a very fruitful bridge building, a connection to happen. On the second question, indeed, people thought really, when I was quitting Siemens, everyone said I'm crazy. Everyone, including my family and friends, everyone was saying that. But when I told them that, look, I feel like I'm selling my lifetime against money. That was my feeling. But I realized lifetime is more valuable than money. It didn't make any sense. I just couldn't muster the energy to go into the office and try to make more money for a company. So I told my boss I'm quitting, and he had almost tears in his eyes, because he could, at a deeper level, he could understand it. He said, wow, you're going on a round the world trip. When I was younger, I would have loved to do it. So it was really kind of a heart wish. It was really coming from deep within me. So after that travel, I was struggling with, okay, now I want to do something more meaningful. I still have this business expertise. How can I apply it in a smart way? Because by then, money wasn't my primary driving force. It was more like, I want to make a difference. And luckily, the United Nations under Kofi Annan has started a private sector initiative, the Global Compact, which I could enter as an intern. So, I mean, after my nice manager salary from Siemens, I was an unpaid intern for the Ren in New York, which was a bit of a costly expertise. But it was a bit of an investment, because I mean, I've worked then my way up all the way to where I am now.
Before I ask a question, let me offer my appreciation for Juergen Nagler, who is from an MBA background and doing a mindset research. So wonderful. The question is like this: from the thesis, what kind? We're not that much clear that how and it will be applicable. Your thesis, the moral didactic you got from your thesis, how it will be applicable in all the world. Like Dr. Phuntsho has cautioned you, like the mindset, it's different in different one. Like the first one, second one in Asia is different. So can you clarify more on how it will be applicable to all? And one thing is, to define mindset, like it should be cognitive responsibility. However, on the other hand, it's a contradictory that there are many negative mindset people, the terrorists. Like on this contrast, like how it can be like shaped to the positive side. So what paradigm shift you have from your thesis? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what I found in my research, still ongoing, is mindsets on the individual level, on the community or country level, and on the global level. Maybe my sample is too small, but I haven't been able to categorize this is an Asian mindset, is an African mindset, is a Western mindset. In fact, I see much more similarities on the individual level. We are, superficially we are different, but on a much higher degree we are very similar. And on the practical application, I mean, I wouldn't label it in positive or negative mindset. To me, it's better to not venture into the judgmental side of things. Everyone can be negative on an issue or can be grumpy on a day. So I mean, we're all human beings, right? We're all multidimensional. But I think what comes out from my research is that we are not a victim of our mindset, and we are also not a victim of other people's negative attitude. We have the ability to respond, so we can change our mindset, and we are responsible for our reaction. I mean, I think it's also very Buddhist that we cannot take the responsibility how other people behave, but we can take responsibility for our own reaction to it. So, I mean, over the last 10 years, I mean, I've come across many challenges and negative labeled things. But the question that I ask myself is, what has that to do with me? And if someone presses a button, it's my button, so I can't blame the other person. So I try to look within me and see what within me I can shift and change and learn. Which is not completely new, by the way. I mean, there might be certain meditation techniques that do that, or others it's called shadow work, or I mean, there are different ways how you introspect. So I'll also share one book later that might be an inspiration into that direction.
I'm Kizam, and I work for an Australian company in IT Park. Thank you for a very inspiring talk and a very important topic as we transition, or especially for Bhutan, looking forward to transitioning into a middle-income country. My question, I have two independent questions, I guess. The first one is related to the relationship between the UNDP and its members. What is your thought around whether it is more of a parasitic relationship or a more symbiotic? I think the relationship has transitioned and come a long way, and there are schools of thoughts where people think perhaps there is no need for UNDP in many countries. That's my first question, or clarification rather. The second one is related to something that Bhutan probably is facing in a big way at this point in time from a development perspective. And this is based on a couple of meetings I had yesterday with some 4 CEOs moving around, going around lobbying for them to come for a meeting. And all of them said, we are losing a lot of our skilled people to the developed world like Australia, where they go and do unskilled work. And that is where, and they think it is a menace, because they spend a lot of money, investment, time into training these people. And at the end of the day, after 1 or 2 years, they're gone. I think this relates closely to the kind of mindset we're going through in a GNH country, and perhaps looking forward to some of your thoughts around this and how UNDP could play some role in providing some interim or some solutions to balancing this in terms of coming up with perhaps solutions with working with stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the 2 questions. On the first one, UNDP is very much needed and in high demand by governments, especially host governments. So I mean, UNDP is 100% voluntary funded. So it's not it's not invented by a General Assembly resolution and getting its money and becoming a big bureaucracy, quite the opposite. Given that all the programs are designed with national ownership, in this case Bhutan designs its 5-year plan, it has its own vision, and then Bhutan itself asks what support it wants from the international community. So that's the foundation where UNDP crafts its value addition. And that can be different from country to country. It might be different in a least developed country from a middle income country. But given that the world is on a very unsustainable trajectory right now, we need all support we can get towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Even to a degree that highly developed countries have asked, wouldn't UNDP also be able to play a role there, despite they have all the capacities? But of course, in a country like Bhutan, we are very, very happy to be able to have a very strong partnership with so many parts of government on very strategic issues. So the alignment of the 5-year plan, for instance, with the SDGs, I think is a very good foundation for a lot of excellent collaboration. The second point relates to a little bit to the private sector question as well. Indeed, we know that 90% of new jobs are created in micro and small and medium enterprises. So the issue of youth unemployment is a very significant one, not just in Bhutan, but many developing countries. So especially in the context of the LDC graduation, it's a priority, I believe, of the government to diversify the economy and really nurture a more vibrant private sector which can absorb young people. At the same vein, not all young people will find employment in the typically traditional designed jobs. Not everyone will become a dasho or a director. So we'll have to, and this I think the Loden Foundation is doing excellent work, also nurture an entrepreneurial mindset. It's about young people with their own creativity and ideas being able to start their own enterprises, their own businesses. And I think this is an area where more needs to be done, and UNDP is working with various parts of government to actually also ensure that there is a conducive environment for that.
If I may add to this, the entrepreneurial mindset is wonderful, especially to deal with the problem of unemployment. But the question was more about employed people with skills, leaving the country to go and do something that doesn't require any skills. Now, I don't know if the entrepreneurial mindset will really solve that problem. Is that more to do with the deeper level of mindset of wanting materialistic goals very soon, at a faster pace, than being more patient or more having a mindset more like yours? You left Siemens to seek a colorful, even spiritual life, a fulfilling life. So, is there a mindset shift that the young Bhutanese with skills who are emigrating needs to have, so that we don't have this problem of immigration?
It would actually be a good question to research, to ask these young people why do they leave, and I think a significant chunk also then comes back.
Yes.
So also when I was younger, I was also venturing the world and aiming for, there's a saying, the pastures look greener on the other side. So maybe it's part of the inquisitive youthness to seek also some other experiences or skills abroad. In fact, I did also study in Australia, but then came back. So I wouldn't necessarily judge it. I think it would be a bigger problem of brain drain if they would never come back, if they would leave Bhutan for good. Given that they seem to have a relation and many do come back, I think it can be an asset. It seems also the amount of remittances is a financial inflow. Nonetheless, probably the more opportunities can be offered in Bhutan, the less younger people will see the need to go abroad.
Thank you, Dr. Kama. Always a pleasure to attend your talks, and I always enjoy talks by Dr. Karma and also the session on the Bhutan Dialogue. Thank you, Juergen, for sharing your thoughts on your work and also on your PhD. I'm also intrigued by the fact that I recently read an article by Robert D. Hare, who is a criminal psychologist, researcher on criminal psychology. And he says that not all psychopaths are in prison. Some of them are in a boardroom. So it intrigued me to the fact that how can that be possible? But anyway, the gist of the article is that it says we cannot at all change the mindset of the psychopaths, because for them, whatever they do is seen as perfectly normal, and outright, which we see it as abnormal. And anything out of that is seen by them as abnormal, which we see it as normal. So they are saying, because they get parole and all this, they get some support, they learn the language. Oh yes, I feel remorse. I'm good now, I'm improving. So they're saying, but it is not at all true. I mean, you cannot at all change. So he's also saying, in that sense, even in our workplace, there are psychopaths who who exhibits, in a certain way which we feel is normally not. In case of our supervisor or bosses and all, who bullies or things like that, which we don't see it as a normal thing. So since you're doing a PhD on mindset, I would like to hear your thoughts on those in the workplaces and others. Thank you.
I mean, what comes to mind is it can be helpful to have a dialogue on values. Like at the workplace, for instance, what we as a team, what do we value? Because then as a team, you also you raise awareness amongst each other, and you also set the boundaries, what is acceptable and what is not. I mean, let's say sexual harassment is not acceptable. Other things, coming late, being early, being noisy. I mean, there are a million different things. The community itself defines what is okay and what is not okay. I mean, outright criminal or violent behavior, we have laws, not acceptable. You go to prison, or you have to do psychotherapy or whatever. So there's no panacea per se. And some people want to change, others don't want to change. And we can't change them from the outside. But we can draw boundaries. So I think that would be the best I could offer. No magic tablet we can take.
I'm going to start off with some academic stuff, but I will link it to Bhutan with a question at the end, so bear with me. I've noticed in the field of development studies, particularly thinking about mindset, there's been some evolutions. Two aspects that I can think of. For one, in terms of systems thinking, there's been a change in terms of development aid. Instead of trying to change the elements of the system, we should change the interconnections, which is heavily related to changing mindsets of the people, right?
Yes.
In addition, also, there's been a change of mindset within development aid. Instead of making these big plans, instead of like a top-down approach, there should be more of a diversity in all kinds of projects and kind of a natural growth in development. So I would like to ask you how, here in the context of Bhutan, G&H is kind of more of a top-down approach, right? And so how do you reconcile these two, where you have a country trying to develop, which has a structure that is largely top-down, but at the same time, from the field of development studies, we see the movement that focuses more on bottom-up approaches. Does that make sense?
Yeah, wow, it's very rich. But you have a good point on systems thinking, indeed, that has been growing over the last 1-2 decades probably. And this is actually very closely related. In fact, one of the books I'm suggesting is of a leading systems thinker, because there it is about finding more the root causes and changing what is actually constituting the system rather dealing with the symptoms. And I also agree with you that over the last decades there has been a shift from giving development aid, from handouts, to a more development cooperation approach. So basically, instead of top-down, make it more level playing field. In Bhutan, probably Kama would be even better to answer that. If you want to go first, or shall I tend to see the glass much more half full than half empty. In fact, on G&H I see how holistic it is and see the foresight that the leadership of Bhutan has led the country with. Many of the developed countries have an ecological footprint which would require 2 or 3 planet Earth. We don't have that. Bhutan has protected its forest and is a carbon sink. It absorbs more carbon than it emits. So to me, it has this positive demonstration effect. The leadership, I mean, maybe Karma, you want to talk a little bit more?
So let me chip in a little bit. How I see with regard to bottoms up and top down approaches in case of GNH is, GNH was pretty much a widespread, very diffuse cultural practice in Bhutan until recent times. Until about the time when we started to philosophize and crystallize the idea into a concept called cross-national happiness. So the connection to nature, we have the spirituality, we have the cultural life, they were all very well established, very vibrant. And I think it is around the time when Bhutan was beginning to change that the leader, in a very smart way, crystallized the spirit into a concept. So now we have a concept being formulated as a policy and then being passed down from the top. If the bottoms-up cultural practices that we have, the well-established traditions that we have, meet the top-down policies, I think we are in a very lucky, fortunate position. There is every risk that we may miss, these two may miss each other, in that by the time the top-down policy reaches the grassroots, the cultural base might have already faded. So hopefully that will be the case. Let's hope that the policy from the top-down will manage to link with the leftovers, the remainders of whatever there is of the cultural heritage, and these two join forces together to bring a synergistic approach to GNH.
And related, I think decentralization is still work in progress. I mean, there's this decentralization process going on for quite a while. We also have to acknowledge that it's only a 10-year-old democracy, so that we just had the 3rd elections, peaceful. So these are relatively recent positive developments, which seem to increase the participation and self-responsibility of all people in Bhutan.
I really liked the way you were able to explain the need for those of us who have a fixed mindset to be able to shift to a growth mindset. And those of us who are in the United Nations know that many of us have a fixed mindset. So I really like that type of very easy to understand disadvantages of a fixed mindset. I understood that what prompted you to break out of your fixed mindset was a motorbike crash. Of course, the ideal is that those of us who have a fixed mindset, don't all have to have a motorbike car crash. So, can you suggest 2 easy ways to break out of a fixed mindset into a growth mindset?
And even better, a benefit mindset.
An even better a benefit, but at least let's keep this doable, huh?
No easy answer, Jerry. Introspection and soul searching. So it's not about following what the others want or what the media or the advertisement tells you or what the norm tells you. While we are embedded in a broader culture, we have an individuality. So that comes probably from the heart or the intuition or the gut. So to connect to this inner, fragile little inner voice, and then probably take the courage to get out of the comfort zone.
Now, my final question to you is, Bhutan Dialogues offers 2 books as a token of appreciation for your time and your knowledge, your insight. We asked you which 2 books you chose and why, if you can share with the audience.
Thank you, Carmen. So one book, it's by a leading systems thinker, Otto Scharmer, German name, but he lectures at the MIT in the US. It's called Leading from the Emerging Future, from ecosystem to ecosystem economies. So I think this has really a lot of insights how to connect the dots, how to think deeper, and how we can actually contribute practically to a change in our own leadership, in our own organizations and in companies that we work. So that's inspiring. There's also some very good online courses available. And the second book is by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, a guide to spiritual enlightenment. Wow, that's not a promise. So that is more on the spiritual side. It makes interesting references to some universal laws and universal know-how from Buddha or Jesus Christ, with practical tips how we can in fact connect to our inner intelligence, our inner GPS. So that's I also greatly appreciate that book.
It was a very rich, insightful conversation, and I think it is for the young audience, the 3 terms, fixed mindset, growth mindset, and benefit mindset can be your takeaways. I find it very, very interesting because these are terminologies from modern psychology, positive psychology, I suppose. Whereas to me, these are very ancient Buddhist concepts. And for those of you who are also fellow Buddhists, this may strike a chord. Buddhism denies any fixed entity as a self. There's no real karma that is fixed and absolute. I am what I make of myself, my cultural, emotional, spiritual, political, social components that constitute me. So it's all about growth, really growing myself, shaping myself. And then you come to Mahayana Buddhism, it's really about not only growing yourself, but helping also others. It's about a benefit mindset. So it really has a striking resemblance to the whole Buddhist system that we have here. Now, if you ask a Buddhist, what can you read on mindset? They'll probably point to about 105 volumes of Kanjur and 225 volumes of Penjur. And that's a vast corpus of literature. There's no one book like the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita even. But there's one book of all the Buddhist books that may sum up the quintessence of Buddha's teachings, and that's the Dharmapada, the verses of Dharma. And the first verse in that book is what I wanted to share with you, because it deals with mindset. Mind is the forerunner of all things. Mind is the chief, and all are mind-made. So with that, thank you very much for coming to Bhutan Dialogues. Enjoy the refreshments outside, and see you again next month.
Thank you.